Hello, children. What do you do today? It's been some time since we have seen each other. It is good to see you. I hope you had a good restful weekend. Hope you had a good time with your friends or watching TV. Whatever you like to do, maybe play Xbox. Whatever you do. But now it's time for school, so we will get back to the education that Mr. Mark is being paid to give you, and I am volunteering to give you. I'm a good man. Okay. Now, if you have not noticed, Hogginoff has lost bow tie. Want to know where it went? Hopefully we will find it. However, my red Patches has volunteered to sit on my neck in the meantime. He's going to keep me warm in the Russian winter. And I have decided to put my collar up like this because I think it looks cool. Looks good. Okay. Now that we have gotten our silliness out of the way, we can get to the science. Now, next part in the science plan. We're still in heredity, talking about how heredity is the passing of genetic instructions down from parent to offspring. Talked about how the genetic information in the nucleus of the cell is called the DNA. How specific parts of this DNA that determine specific traits, such as your eye color, is called genes. I talked about how chromosomes are packages of DNA and how there are 23 pairs of chromosomes for every human being. 23 from the mother, 23 from the father. So we've spent time talking about how a mother and a father come together and they make offspring. Well, this is called sexual reproduction. Now, today we are learning about sexual reproduction. Now, I assume Mr. Marcus told you will be writing notes today, so I would like you to get your pens and your pencils ready. You're about to take notes now. So, sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction where the genetic materials from two different cells combine, producing offspring. I will wait for you to finish writing. If you still need more time, Mr. Mark will now pause the video. If not, we will move on. Okay. Now, in this definition of sexual reproduction, it mentions two different cells combining. Now, these aren't just any cells. They're two specific cells. One cell comes from the female. One cell comes from the male. The female cell is called the egg. Write that down. Good. Okay. And the male cell is called the sperm. Okay. Write down. Good. Okay. Now, the process of this egg cell in the sperm cell coming together to create a new cell is called fertilization. Not like what you put in garden, not that. It is when male cell and female cell, the egg and the sperm, come together to form a new cell. Now, when these two cells come together, they're called something new. Sperm, egg, come together. It's called the zygote. Not the goat or zygote. It's the zygote. So please write down the definition that I've given you so that you may remember this. I will give you time. Okay, thank you. Now, there are many pros and cons, if you do not know what that means, advantages or disadvantages to sexual reproduction for an organism. First, we will talk about the advantages. One example would be something called genetic variation. Now, if you have not noticed, every human being reproduces sexually. You will look around and you will see that no person is the exact same. This is because two people come together and they give their DNA to their offspring, half and half, but the same half is not always taken. Maybe I get my eye color from my mother. Then my parents come together and then they have another baby and I have a little sister. But my sister does not have the eye color of my mother like I do. She has the eye color of my father. This is because there is genetic variation. We do not get the same genes from our parents. My parents give my sister some genes, and then they give me other genes. So I will have traits my parents have, and my sister may have different traits. This creates diversity. Now, this is not just important because we all look different and we don't want to all look the same. That would be boring. Boring world. It's also good because sometimes you have mutations. For example, in crops, let us say that some plants have resistance to disease, while other plants do not. And then one day, large disease comes to field, wipes out all plants because none have resistance to disease. But because of genetic variation, some plants will be resistant, some plants will not. So some plants will die, and many may survive, which means that instead of going hungry for the rest of the season, the farmers can have the plants that survived. This is good thing. This is very good thing. This is necessary for the survival of all species, for there to be differences in our DNA, so that we are different. Now, there are disadvantages to sexual reproduction. For example, it takes a lot of time and energy. A human mother is pregnant for 9 months. When she is pregnant, she walks around with a big bowling ball in her stomach. She cannot run. She cannot lift boxes. She cannot plow field or do anything. She cannot. She's crazy. She can't. This makes it hard to survive. Now nowadays we are lucky because we have a society where pregnant women can have other people do things for them and help them out. But back in old days, if you are pregnant, then it is hard life, very hard life. Now, even besides that, it takes long time before an organism can even be sexually mature enough to reproduce in the first place. For example, a child that is 6 years old has not developed the sex cells of an egg or a sperm to even reproduce. Do not get those cells until you hit puberty. So it takes a long time before an organism can even reproduce, which means it's less likely to reproduce. Another disadvantage is that you have to find a mate, and it can be difficult to find a mate. For us humans as well as other animals, sometimes it is very cutthroat road out there. I think we all know this. Here is an interesting fact. See, if you think dating is hard in the human world, let me tell you a story about something called black widows. So, black widow is a spider, right? Spiders are icky. I do not like spiders. I like rats. Like rats who sit on my chest while I talk about science. Anyway, female black widow has sex with male black widow to reproduce. Then female gets hungry. So, she eats male. Cannibalism. It's very bad. It's terrifying. So, just know that you do not have it as bad as black widows. Now let us recap of lesson before I go on to do my science experiments and all of the other things that I do while you are not around. So, we have two types of reproduction for organisms. There's sexual and asexual. Today, we talked about sexual reproduction, which is a type of reproduction where the genetic materials from two different cells combine, producing offspring. The two cells are called the egg, which is the female sex cell, in the sperm, which is the male sex cell. When they come together, it is called fertilization. And the new cell that they make is called the zygote. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to sexual reproduction. One advantage being that there's genetic variance, meaning that some may be resistant to disease and may survive, where others may not. So it is good to have diversity, because if all peoples do not have resistance to disease, then everybody dies. That's bad. Disadvantages include it takes very long time to produce offspring. Human females are pregnant for 9 months. It's very long time to have big bowling ball in stomach. Also, it is hard to find mates sometimes. Maybe you are a Black Widow and you find a mate and then she eats you. It's bad. Anyway, children, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Remember, my name is Dmitri Hogginoff. I am scientist and inventor. Mr. Famous. #followback. I will see you next time when we talk about asexual reproduction. We'll learn more about science. You have a nice day.